why America would want to cripple SpaceX, which is fast becoming the major provider of commercial satellite launches in America because nobody else can just keep up, is rather beyond me. But if Trump were to do that, you run into the question of, is it legal?
Henry Olsen, a senior fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining the Trump Report today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, let's start off with what's really making the rounds, which is, of course, Trump's big, beautiful tax cuts and spending bill. It's currently being deliberated over in the Senate. Senators are aiming to have a decision by July 4 because they, of course, go to recess, but they're actually hoping for an answer by Wednesday or Thursday this week. We've seen two Republican senators, Rand Paul and Tom Tillis, firmly reject it, and a few others openly expressing their concerns. But how likely do you think that this will pass, Henry?
Usually I would say that it would be certain it would pass because the president's major objective in a first year of a term almost never fails. But I think we have to be open to the possibility that this will. The fact is, they're trying to do too many things at once with this bill, and with slim and narrow margins, that simply is proving to be very difficult to do. Cutting popular programs, squeezing in all of these different types of tax cuts. Uh, I would say it's a 50-50 chance that this does not pass on schedule. Now, it's not to say that they can't rescue it later down the line, but there are really lots of serious concerns with how to do this, and they may not be able to get it done in the next few days.
If this doesn't pass this week, Henry, it would mean that the bill could either die, it could lose momentum, it might need to be reintroduced and kind of redone in a way that is a bit more popular with those that are against it. But how do you think Trump will retaliate against those senators and those two House Republicans, which is, of course, were Thomas Massey and Warren Davidson, who voted alongside Democrats?
Yeah, well, he's already threatening primary challenges. He's openly recruiting a primary challenger to Tom Massey. He is definitely trying to bulldoze this through and bully people who are opposed to him. But on the other hand, a lot of these, particularly the senators who have longer terms of office and are probably in better financial position to withstand a Trump onslaught, know that they also have to face voters, and those voters don't always do what Donald Trump wants them to do. So he will try to bully them into submission, but it's not clear with these senators that he's going to succeed, particularly, and this is something that's important to note. Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, two of the 53 Republicans, are essentially elected with non-Republican votes. That Murkowski is now so estranged from the conservative Republican base that they run candidates against her, and she wins with the support of Democrats and independents. And Collins gets crossover votes. She's the only senator who represents a state that Kamala Harris won. They are very cognizant that their survival depends on winning over votes from people who don't like Donald Trump. So if they combine by voting no with Tillis and Paul, the bill is dead. And there's not very much Donald Trump can do about that.
And then on the other note, these two senators that have firmly said no, of course, you mentioned Rand Paul and Tom Tillis, they're in a bit of a different situation to other Republicans if they weren't into this bill, as some have come out and strongly supported Donald Trump, because Rand Paul isn't up for re-election for his Senate seat until 2029, and Tom Tillis has already announced that he's retiring. So they don't actually have as much to lose as some others who have said they have concerns with it, but they're not completely opposed to it just yet. So I wonder, Henry, do you think that there has been more Republicans that are actually in secret quite opposed to this big, beautiful bill, but have a lot more to lose and know that there could be repercussions from Donald Trump if they oppose it and they're up for election at the 2026 midterm elections.
Well, of course, that is true in the House, where everyone is up every 2 years. Yes, there are lots of Republicans who, if you allowed them to cast a secret ballot, would be opposed to it for different reasons. There are moderates who don't like the specifics of the cuts. There are deficit hawks who think that it should not expand the deficit by as much as it does and would like to see more spending cuts to offset this. Yeah, I think if this were a secret vote, it would not go down. But of course, we're in a democracy, so it's not a secret vote, and therein lies the rub.
Henry, let's get into the big headlines making waves when it comes to this bill, which is, of course, Elon Musk's weigh in. We saw the demise of Donald Trump and Elon Musk's relationship heavily being about this big, beautiful tax cuts and spending bills. Now, here's what Musk has said overnight about it. He said the latest Senate draft bill will destroy millions of jobs in America and cause immense strategic harm to our country. Utterly insane and destructive. It gives handouts to industries of the past while severely damaging industries of the future. Now, the question I want to ask you is in response to what someone responded to Elon Musk when he wrote that scathing attack on Donald Trump's bill. This person wrote, maybe you should not have spent hundreds of millions of dollars of your own money to elect all these people committed to damaging industries of the future. Now, Henry, of course, Elon Musk can criticize Trump all he wants, but that is an interesting point to bring out. You spent a lot of money, of your own money, to get these people elected.
Yeah, look, Elon Musk is somebody who was entirely new to politics, and I think had hopes that were not realistic and did not understand the sorts of pressures that are inherent in politics. I still think Musk is incredibly naive when it comes to actual political behavior. Um, on the other hand, I think what Musk experienced, which is to say the blackballing and attempts at canceling him when he bought Twitter simply to keep the lines of discussion open in a move to protect free speech, red pilled him, which is to say that he had been a moderate Democrat, a pretty typical libertarian leaning but socially liberal Democrat from the Silicon Valley. And all of his former friends decided that he was the enemy for doing something that he thought, and rightfully so, was consistent with American values. So he went all the way over and became ultra extreme, and I don't think quite realized what political forces he was allying with, which were not in favor of the socially liberal, techno-futurist view that he shared. And that's unfortunate that he was naive in that way, but he was.
Henry, when this fallout between Donald Trump and Elon Musk happened, one of the first kind of queries about it would be how would Elon Musk use his money to, I guess, retaliate and get revenge on Donald Trump. So it was all about what he would do when the primary started to roll around. Now, Musk has tweeted that every member of Congress who campaigned on reducing government spending and then immediately voted for the biggest debt increase in history should hang their heads in shame, and they will lose their primary next year if it's the last thing I do on earth. So a bit of a threat from Donald Trump. I wonder how much influence do you think Elon Musk has over those voters who will be heading to the ballot box, over people, over those members of Senate or House that voted alongside Donald Trump?
I don't think Musk personally has much influence over them. The question, though, is do Republican primary voters care about reducing the deficit? Elon Musk thinks they do. The members think they don't, that they care more about tax cuts and supporting Donald Trump. If Elon Musk wants to spend $100 million in primary challenges, he can probably fund 20 or 30, probably closer to 30 serious primary challenges against members of the House with that type of money. I know for English ears that sounds absurd, but welcome to America and how we conduct campaigns. They're massively expensive. And we're also massively large. Each member of the House represents 750,000 people, or roughly the equivalent of 7 House of Commons constituencies. And we'll see whether they care more about cutting the deficit or cutting taxes in Donald Trump. I think Musk will find to his dismay that it's not the uniparty, it's the univoter, that the Republican voter talks about cutting government, but what they really care about is cutting taxes. But that's what elections are for, and if he does that, we'll find out who's right.
Well, let me ask you this, Henry. What would it take for Trump's MAGA constituents, or even just right wing conservatives, or anyone in his, kind of a lower middle household? What would it take when it comes to the economy and what happens this year with the economy for them to question their allegiance to Trump?
Yeah, I don't think the MAGA base is going to question their allegiance to Trump, but the MAGA base is not a majority of his coalition. The MAGA base is not a majority of the Republican Party. It's the largest faction in the Republican Party and hence the most influential in the general election coalition. You know, if the economy does go south, if we have a stock market collapse, we have a slowdown in the economy, pickup in inflation, and so forth. Clearly, people who reluctantly backed Trump, of which there are quite a few, will start to want to change in course. And that's true both in the general election coalition and in the Republican primary coalition. That there are a lot of people who are backing Trump because they think he's successful rather than that they are in love with him, the person. And if he stops looking like he is successful, they will start looking around.
Mm. Elon Musk, he kind of kept up this tirade and rhetoric up when he wrote this on X, Henry. He said, if this insane spending bill passes, the America Party will be formed the next day. Our country needs an alternative to the Democrat-Republican Uni Party so that people actually have a voice. Now, we've seen Musk do a lot of things this year that we weren't expecting, but do you see this happening? Elon Musk launching his own party. He hasn't exactly said it's an independent party, but it would be his own party for the America base he says don't have a voice.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of discontent with the two major parties, but it's not a majority. You know, you take a look at all the different polls, and you can see that probably about a third to a little bit more than a third of Americans like the Republican Party general direction. Probably 30 to 35%, a few points less, like the Democratic Party direction. And so that maybe leaves a theoretical third who would go the other way, but you have to get them to agree on something. And what you find is that they actually disagree amongst themselves on what direction should happen. Once Elon Musk creates a party, we'll find out exactly how many people are socially centrist, techno-futurist, small government types. And I think you'll find the answer is less than 10%, probably less than 5% would say, I like this alternative. They may still be dissatisfied with the two big alternatives, but I don't think the one that Elon Musk supports has much support among the American people.
Mm. And we've seen, even if this party doesn't come to light, Henry, as you mentioned before, in terms of funding political opponents or people against Donald Trump, we've already seen Elon Musk say a few hours ago that he was willing to donate money to Thomas Massey's election campaign. Following a few weeks ago, we saw Trump label Massey a pathetic loser. So that might kind of be the beginning of Elon Musk's new kind of a stage in politics after leaving Doge in May. But we've seen Trump now go after Musk, saying that without government subsidies, loans, contracts, and tax credits that Elon Musk's Tesla and SpaceX have received, which is estimated to be about $38 billion, he probably would have to close up shop and head back home to South Africa. No more rocket launches, satellites, or electric car production, and our country would save a fortune. Perhaps we should have Doge take a good hard look at this. Big money to be saved. So I want to get your reaction to that, Henry. We've obviously seen a war of words between these two, but that's a pretty startling comment from Donald Trump to not
It's
only
a
say
very
that he might have
startling
to go back
comment.
to South. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he, certainly with respect to Tesla, I don't think Tesla is dependent on these sorts of subsidies. Certainly, a lot of the tax credits that have been done with respect to the purchase of electric vehicles in the last few years largely excluded Tesla because Tesla was already so successful. and why America would want to cripple SpaceX, which is fast becoming the major provider of commercial satellite launches in America because nobody else can just keep up, is rather beyond me. But if Trump were to do that, you run into the question of, is it legal? And what you can't do in the United States is use government power to deprive people of constitutional protections. And if what he's basically done is say, I will use my government contacts to force you to take a political position that I want you to take, that is largely unconstitutional in the United States. And Elon Musk would have every incentive to sue if Donald Trump were to do that, to say that this is a deprivation of his First Amendment freedoms. And I think the courts would uphold that. So Trump's lawyers ought to sit down with him and say, well, you know, sir, you may not be able to get away with that. And I think Trump is actually not thinking of following through because once calmer heads get to him, they would explain the massive risks that are involved if he were to go ahead and do that. But we've known Trump operates on personal pique a lot. Certainly, he's angry at Musk, and he could very well overrule those people. What Trump proposes is unconstitutional and could be a major Supreme Court case if this continues to unfold this way. SpaceX is succeeding because SpaceX is producing a massively successful, innovative product. And there are people who benefit from that who won't want to see it hurt. You know, if you are a commercial satellite provider or a company who needs new satellites up in the air, up in the Earth orbit, you don't want to see SpaceX put out of business because then you can't get your satellites up. I'm sure the military is looking at what SpaceX is doing, and there are going to be a lot of people who say, don't do this. This is bad for America. And then you've got the question is, if you want to manufacture things that can be used in military production, cutting out your most innovative rocket producer seems to be rather cutting off your nose to spite your face.
So, Henry, if you had to pick which side would be impacted, suffer more from the end of these contracts, for the sever of ties between the US government, Trump's administration, and Elon Musk's Tesla, SpaceX, potentially Starlink, who would it be? Would Elon Musk suffer the most, or would Donald Trump suffer the most?
Well, I don't think Donald Trump would suffer a whole lot unless you started to see real problems that flowed from that, which is to say that all the polls show that Republicans back Trump over Musk in these battles because many people absolutely adore Donald Trump. Clearly, SpaceX would suffer quite a bit. Whether it would suffer to the point of closing down, well, I don't know enough about its financials to know how much it depends on government contracts as opposed to private contracts. But certainly, I think Musk would suffer more. The question is, first of all, would the courts allow Trump to do that? As I said, I think it would be very clear after the Truth Social post that there would be a strong case that any cancellation of contracts would be a violation of the Constitution. And then you've got the question of if a man's willing to lose $20 billion to keep Twitter operating, which is what his paper loss is right now, maybe he'd be willing to lose $10 billion to keep the most innovative space company in the world afloat.
That's a very good point, Henry. Just a final question for you. We're moving off Elon Musk and Donald Trump, and I do find keeping up to date with these pollings that go across the country quite interesting. So the recent Gallup polling has seen pride in America has dropped to a historic low, and this is, of course, ahead of the July 4 weekend. What we see right now is that 36% of Democrats say they're extremely or very proud to be American, while 53% of independents say they were. But then, of course, there's the contrast of seeing Republicans, 92% so they're very extremely or very proud to be American. So there's quite a disparity right now between Democrats and independents and Republicans on being proud to be American. So does that kind of indicate to you right now in America there is quite a deep divide between where people politically lean when it comes to their pride for the country?
Oh, absolutely. And if you take a look at the longevity of that, this has been going on for quite some time. That Democrats and Republicans and independents did not really disagree on this question back in 2001. They didn't really disagree throughout the first Bush term. Democrats start going down in the second Bush term, and they don't really come back during the Obama term. They don't come back during the Biden term. So this isn't, while it again dropped quite a bit during the Trump era, this is an ongoing thing for Democrats and for people who lean as independents towards the Democratic Party. Republicans and people who lean towards the Republican Party just have not changed over the last quarter century. Democrats have been on a downward slope for over 2 decades. And that suggests something about why people become Democrats, that it was different in the last couple of decades than was true in years prior. And it's very difficult to see where a party that whose adherents become members of that party because they don't like their country. It is hard to see where that gives them a space to expand to actually govern that country. People tend to like parties that like the country that they are in, even if the country is one they are going on, think there's going down the wrong path. They want it to go to a right path because they love their country. If fundamentally you want to be in a different country, it's very difficult to see where eventually that comes out, and eventually people on the fence will decide, hey, actually, whether I like the direction I'm going in or not, I actually like the country, and maybe I should vote for a party that agrees with me.
A very interesting point, Henry. Thank you so much for joining the Trump Report today.
Thank you for having me on.